to episode 163 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast, recorded May 29th, 2022. My name is Ian. I'm a surprisingly social hermit on Vancouver Island. Eric is focusing on family for some reason, so I'm lead host tonight. Use small words in your questions. Go easy on me, please.
No.
And I'm Jeff. I'm based in Central Ontario. I'm a target shooter, ham radio operator, general overall handyman, and weather nerd. I'll explain that in a bit. For those of you who are frequent listeners, you know that Eric has been absent the last few episodes for, as Ian said, family reasons. So myself, along with the rest of the panel, wish to congratulate Eric on the arrival of his second child, the daughter Ava Catherine, born last Friday, weighing a whopping 11 pounds, 9 ounces. I was able to go over yesterday and see the little miss, and I can vouch that she is very happy and healthy. So congratulations to Eric and his wife on the safe arrival.
Yay!
Yay! It's Canada's newest prepper right there.
Absolutely.
I'm Alan. I'm a first responder security expert and overall safety nerd.
I'm Scott. I'm a first responder from Ontario. I like learning things and I worry about our fragile infrastructure. Not to say I told you so, but this week has been a good demonstration of that.
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Brad. I'm in Eastern Ontario. Consider myself a part-time amateur prepper who's constantly trying to better myself.
And if you want to help support the show and keep the Canadian Prepper Podcast on the air, buy some swag. We have both the Canadian Prepper Podcast t-shirt, worn tonight by Jeff, and the super cool tactical Velcro patch. You can get those both at www.prepperpodcast.ca. All proceeds help keep the lights on and the backup generator fueled.
If you're enjoying the show, please take a few minutes and like us on Facebook and submit a review on iTunes. We also want your feedback, good, bad, or otherwise, or if there's just a topic you want us to cover. You can send emails to feedback@prepperpodcast.ca.
All right, we have some foundational content for you this episode.
Still written by Eric, right?
Yeah, well.
Oh, really?
He's here in spirit, that's right. We're going to start off with some recent news, update our personal preps, and we'll get into the main topic, which tonight is basics of prepping. So news first.
I got nothing.
So, considering the whole... Sorry, did you have anything, Al?
Nope, sorry, I said I got nothing.
Okay.
My name's still on the show notes, but I didn't put anything in.
Okay. So I've got a couple. As I'm sure everybody in Ontario is aware of the storm that went through last Saturday. So there's an article about a prepper, I'm sure, who lives in Manotick on the outskirts of Ottawa. And he basically, his house is basically a microgrid. He's got some Tesla backup batteries, solar panels, you name it. And he opened his house to his neighbors to allow them to come in and charge their phones, their laptops, do whatever. So I thought that was great. Brad made a mention that apparently there was also another gentleman who was basically driving around in his truck with a generator in the back and offering to power anybody's fridges or freezers for a couple hours and was just moving on down the street. So kudos to everybody who helped their neighbors. That's what we're here for. So
it is the Canadian way. Good for them. That is the Canadian way. Good for them.
Yeah,
absolutely Canadian way.
Yeah. So out of the storm, there were 3 confirmed tornadoes throughout Ontario, 2 EF1s in London, and an EF2 in Uxbridge. Ottawa, while their damage was severe, it was not a tornado. It was determined to be straight-line wind damage, but the wind speed was equivalent to an EF2 tornado. So tomato, whatever, it doesn't matter, tornado or not, there was extensive damage.
Very extensive.
The last report from Hydro 1 still reports 20,000 without power. Most of that is Eastern Ontario. Ottawa Hydro still says they have about 12,000 without power.
So that one in Ottawa, was that the one that they called the derecha or whatever? Are they the new word, the term?
Yeah, they called the whole thing the derecho, or however you pronounce it, which was just basically a straight line, extended length windstorm is basically the long and the short of it. So,
Creating
no matter where you
unusual
went, like I
names
said-
for the sake of having unusual names.
Well, I think it's
Yeah.
Spanish for like right hand, isn't it? Like, you know, it's izquierda and derecha. I think, or is that misspelled?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm not sure. So something I'm hoping to be able to post a little bit. I've started it this week, just to be quick. Is if I'm aware of any weather updates or anything that people need to be aware of, I'll try and throw something in the notes. So anybody in southern central Ontario, probably over to eastern Ontario at some point, Quebec, I'm sure the northern US, New York, Michigan's probably going to be in this for a heat wave. Monday, Tuesday, at least in Ontario, we're going to have temperatures in the low 30s and the humidex in the high 30s to low 40s for at least Monday, Tuesday. So, you know, check on your elderly neighbors or your elderly family, make sure they're fine. And I know we should never have to say this, but we do, and we have to keep repeating it. For God's sakes, don't leave your animals in your vehicle, especially in this kind of temperature. So,
If you are tempted to leave your animal in your vehicle in hot weather, call me. I will come over, hit you very hard, and take your animal.
Well, there's a
And
special
I'll-
place
and
in
I'll
hell for
join you.
that. Yeah.
Yep.
Scott?
So going off the weather story, I had a really interesting article talking about how much damage actually happened. So all hydro was saying they've had to replace 325 hydro poles that were damaged by a straight line wind. Typical year, they replaced 340. So in the last week, they've had to do a year's work. They done most
Which is
of
about
that
3 months for people who are non-union.
True.
I was going to make a government efficiency joke at the end of this, but yeah, go ahead.
The only reason they were able to do that is because it was localized and they were able to call in a lot of favors from friends and neighbors, i.e. hydro linemen from New Brunswick. So just sort of showing the extent of damage after the fact. And then I also had looking at sort of how many people a week later are still without power. I'm going to add to total, Jeff, just because there's still a bunch in sort of where the line can that are without power. And they are sort of, I think the total they're figuring is about 1,000. And some of them are talking about it being a weeks long process where they're going to have to rebuild sections of the grid, like down near Tweed and stuff. So, hey, maybe we have 60,000 potential new listeners who are hunkered around their phones listening.
Yeah, could be. Anyway. As for myself, what was it, 11 days ago, they finished up with some latest firearms legislation coming into force. So naturally, they just decided to not even take a full weekend off, and they announced that they're going to be bringing in new firearms legislation starting on Monday. So, yay, government.
Yeah. Hang on to your hats.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to milk this one as long as they can. But yeah, it sounds like more restrictions coming in for firearms owners, you know, hunters, everything else. So, yeah, that should be interesting to see what pops up tomorrow. Okay. What have we done lately for preps?
I sealed a whole bunch of oatmeal. We bought a great big 50 bag of oatmeal into little Mylar bags. Mostly went well. I might have left some of my oxygen absorbers out for a little too long for the last few bags. They didn't kind of vacuum down quite as well as I'd hoped. And the nice thing is getting ideas off people within our chat here about or what I did wrong. I think I narrowed it down to. I need to figure out how to store raisins because apparently they're a whole different thing because they're moist. And then I played around with some little FRS calls just around here just to see what I could buck my mag local area, see how that went. So playing with some radio stuff.
I wonder if you could check in with Kellogg's because they seem to be able to put the raisins in the Raisin Bran. What's it? 2 scoops in every box. Seems to work out for them.
Right? They're covered in sugar and they have an expiry date. But well, first of all, did you get a response on the FRS radios? I'm actually kind of curious if anybody was listening.
Yeah.
No, it was initially I gave one of my FRS radios to one of my mag friends just to see if we could get between our places that aren't that far apart, but there's a fair amount of topography and leafy cover between now. So we're gonna have to rework this a little bit.
The other thing with the raisins, I mean, they're already kind of dehydrated, so I guess the next step would be like freeze drying them or something. Like, how would you get the excess moisture out of those?
Well, I think they're moist, and that's the problem I was reading, where you have a botulism issue because you can take out all the oxygen, but an anaerobic bacteria doesn't care. They enjoy moisture and sugar. So one thing I was reading said, throw them in the oven or in a dehydrator to take that moisture content down even further. Or we just have to eat raisins faster.
Yeah.
I mean, could you also not just can them and keep them moist?
I guess where that anaerobic thing would come in as well, though.
Yeah, but if they're like preserved like any other fruit, then I mean, it's how different would it be than grape preserves?
Yeah, I was gonna say turn into raisin jam or something, or grape jam for lack of a better term. Right?
I don't know. I mean, there's plenty of sugar content. I don't know if there'd be enough acid content. We'll have to ask our house canning expert to see what she has to say.
Interesting. Well, I didn't get a whole lot of stuff done around here. Too busy working. The company I work for actually did a lot of running back and forth for Ottawa Hydro and Hydro 1 in the eastern Ottawa area, I guess towards Carleton Place and Smith Falls and whatnot, and different equipment getting moved around from different stores to here and there. But I did buy a new book to add to my library, the Wood Gasifiers Bible.
That explains why Scott's here tonight.
Yeah,
that explains it all.
Duh. I think he has search engines in the show notes, and I think as soon as somebody mentions it, he shows up.
I was listening to another podcast, and it really got me thinking about a lot of different things, and one of those being, the basics of the podcast was energy. And if we don't have fuel to run our generators, how are we going to do that? Well, Scott, I think Scott hit it right on the nose with the wood gasifier that I went and bought the book, and I'm going to start sourcing some parts, and I have some people in mind that will hopefully be able to help me build and put it all together and see how it works. So, Scott, the race is on.
One little step here. Other podcasts?
Yes.
Are you seeing other people?
You cheater.
Every afternoon. I have long drives here and there. I've run through all of our podcasts, most of the other CPP podcasts, so I've looked elsewhere for different ones. And
look, if we're not enough for you, just say it. We can change. No, that's not true. We can't.
That's what they all say.
We could literally put out more episodes.
Nothing more we can do than what we're doing right now.
No. It was a really good podcast. It was Sean Ryan.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the one I was going to ask you about, because that was a good one. I like that.
Yes. I actually listened to it once. Pierre actually turned me on to his podcasts. And this last one on the energy, he had shown me that one too and sent me a link to it. So I listened to it on the way to Kingston last week. And then I listened to it again on the way to Montreal Thursday, actually. I figured, I'm gonna get that book and start looking for parts and pieces, and like I said, I have people in mind that can help me build it and put it all together and whatnot. So, Scott, the race is on.
Challenge accepted.
Brandon says Scott's here. Let's ask the question. Brandon's asking, is the Wood Gasifier Bible on Amazon?
Yes, it is. That's where I bought it from.
It is.
Yep. And what's Ben's last name?
Peterson.
There you go. Just look under Ben Peterson. You probably find the Wood Gasifier Bible. I have a copy at home as well, so it's definitely a good read. Hey, Jeff.
I also really didn't do a lot this week. I went this afternoon to a meet and greet with a bunch of local preppers from my area. Had some really good conversation, made some good contacts that I'm sure I will be reaching out to in the near future for advice, ideas, suggestions on some things that I'm working on in the background. And just, really nice to, again, meet those local people that you didn't know were there. So hopefully I can potentially maybe get one of them on a podcast here to talk sometime in the future. They just recently purchased a freeze dryer. We haven't talked about that, so I would like to see if maybe they'd be interested in coming on sometime in the future once they kind of get working with it and get familiar with it. And so,
yeah, that'd be really cool.
Very cool.
Wondering if they're that close. You guys aren't that far away. Wondering if they'll run some stuff for us.
I'm sure if you pitch in for power and whatever, I don't know if there's any wear parts on those things or not, but maybe.
Can you freeze dry raisins?
Well, we know you can freeze dry coffee, that's for sure. So,
and apparently, which I did not know, which was the first thing they did, you can freeze dry Skittles, and apparently they are very good.
Freeze dried Skittles.
Freeze dried Skittles.
Yep.
There's a little artisan around here that freeze dries all sorts of candy, and it's really texture and really tasty. But they take like gummy worms and freeze dry them, and it's really neat.
Wasn't this an episode of Friends? Oh no, that was a dehydrator. It was a food dehydrator. That one weird roommate that Chandler had. No, just me.
Oh yeah, he was a weird roommate. I remember that guy. Yeah,
kept dehydrating food, and anyways.
And so you just dropped a 90s reference. I was going to drop an 80s reference here in a second, but I don't know if anybody would even get that except for Scott, maybe. But anyway, did we ever see the movie Pee-wee's Big Adventure? It's a cult classic. Yeah, it's a cult classic in its own
time, but I know the movie.
Okay, so do you remember when there's a big fire and Pee-wee has to save all the animals and he's in the animal shop and he keeps running back and keeps running by the snakes and going, later. And he rescues the rabbits and he goes by the snakes and gives them a pass and goes back and, Anyway, long story short, I was kind of like that with me in the greenhouse. So I had this greenhouse half built on a property for about the last 3 weeks. And every time I walked by it, I was like, later. I can't deal with this right now. And I'd walk by at the end of the night and be like, I don't want to deal with this because it just the instructions were horrible and everything else. Finally, I buckled down, got the greenhouse built, and it actually went up fairly painlessly, except for the very last window, which was the one that opens and closes with heat because it's got a little beeswax shock in it. And that thing, I think I was almost ready to pitch it into the ocean at this point. But finally got it done, and we're happy it's there. So now we're going to start putting, stuff in there. Hopefully it will extend the growing season a bit. So that is good. And let's see here. I had the woodshed was what was actually holding the pieces for the greenhouse. And so I couldn't do anything with the woodshed. Once the greenhouse is built, the woodshed is empty. So I was able to paint that, get ready to put the next season's batch of wood in there because I burned more than I ever have before. So I definitely want to overstock it this year. So that's the next step for that. And now, speaking of generators, as we're about to talk about those, I had this rinky-dinky old $40 trailer I had set up for the generator that I was going to carry down to the pump house in case of power outages and run it back up and down the hill over the rocks and everything else. And it was basically running on 2 wheelbarrow wheels. And every time it sat for too long, it would either go flat or bust a tube because of the rocks or plywood it was sitting on or whatever. And plus the generator's super heavy, so it'd keep on blowing out tires. And so I tried those solid foam ones and they blew out. They actually went flat and they wouldn't regain their shape. And then, so I finally gave up on this thing.
But it's only flat on the bottom, Ian.
Yeah, you just pull really hard and the wheels will work for 3/4 of the time and then go. Anyway, but so I finally gave up. So I had a old ATV trailer. I had basically beaten the crap out of it the last 5 years. So I just turned that into the new generator trailer and bought myself a new ATV trailer which is my farm tractor. And spent like a day kind of modifying the old ATV trailer to hold the generator. And now it's like good for off-road specials that 12-foot boulders type of thing over no problem and everything else. So I can definitely get down to the pump house. The wheels shouldn't go flat, and I'm a little better peace of mind going for the backup generator for the water pump, which is the big weak spot in our acreage right now because basically without a 220 system, for the water, we're kind of hooped, so that's what the big generator's for. So, long story short, a little more reliability on that one. And then today was shearing day. So, once again, I got a few friends around. We pretended to be farmers for the day. And yeah, we're down to 2 alpacas, so I would almost call it like shearing hour. But nonetheless, it was still a good time. Yeah, got those 2 taken care of. And yeah, just had a little bit of a get together with like-minded folks and made some good contacts. And that was that. I had to head off to work. So, here I am.
Through this week, I didn't do a whole lot of prepping things. I did run some maintenance on my generator after having run it for a couple of days last weekend. Then this weekend, however, I did actually went out and took a tracking course, which was a whole lot of fun. And that gave me an opportunity to actually camp for a couple of nights. So I shook out some kit, haven't, slept in a tent in better part of 2 years. So it was nice to be able to go out, do a little bit of solo camping, and just kind of remember how little I really need to get by for a weekend, which also gave me the opportunity to chat with some other local search and rescue people and kind of improve the network a bit. So that was my weekend.
Awesome. All right. Well, I guess it's time to move on to the main topic. Scott.
Oh my God. If you aren't already 1,000% prepared, you're already dead. Just kidding.
We just don't know it yet.
Reasonable podcast. We're the reasonable podcast. We don't freak out. Originally, we'd had a different topic planned for this week, but considering the hundreds of thousands of people that have been without power for days and days after last week's big windstorms in Ontario, Quebec, and some friends in Alberta that were having some power issues, we figured we should revisit some of the basics for the benefit of newer listeners who may have realized the value in being able to look after yourself and your family's needs. Some of our more involved listeners might find this stuff redundant, but we all came here to learn, and we'll ask those listeners to add some feedback on those lessons they've had from prepping and, for the benefit of these newbies. The nice thing about prepping is it's not a petition. Well, we can both walk in. Normally, you and I can both walk into a store and each buy one of whatever, and it's not a big deal. After things happen, it becomes a competition. If all of my neighbors have gardens and generators and firewood and full pantries when things go awry, then we're all in a better position, and I'm personally much happier and better off because they were prepared. So there's really no problem in everyone getting prepared. So if you're here as a listener for the first time, we're guessing it's because you've realized that things don't always carry on exactly the way they have. For example, supply chains get interrupted, power isn't coming out of the wall, that kind of thing. Congratulations! You've accomplished the first step in prepping, which is shaking off that continuity bias. Ian, you first introduced me to that term when I started listening and interacting with the podcast. Once you realize that our infrastructure is fragile and you see that there are assumptions that we make about the world, we can start doing the little things to help insulate ourselves from those bumps, or consider a form of insurance. Prepping isn't about having bunkers. I'll let the panel disagree here.
Listen, you do not speak for the entire panel.
Yeah. I just wish there was like a rock cutting lightsaber I could actually like carve into the bedrock and actually do like a nice solid. Yeah, but it's not gonna happen.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice?
Oh, I tell you.
When you're done with it, can you send it this way?
Yeah.
Anyway, prepping is much more about having gardens, pantry, generator, knowing your neighbors, that kind of thing. I watched a news report about a guy who was proudly burning wood in the bottom, like the tank section. I assume the propane tank out. Barbecue to cook for his family and his neighbors. Kudos to him. Great MacGyvering. But I'm sure his formerly nice barbecue is kind of trashed. I'd sooner be the guy with the spare tank of propane in the shed and the intact barbecue that can still feed my family and neighbors. So,
or a burning barbecue, charcoal grill.
Exactly. With that in mind, we thought we'd cover some of the simple things that people can do be it for another power outage, a blizzard, anything. We all that way can be the neighborhood hero with the intact barbecue. So one of the topics that obviously is going to be of great interest to an awful lot of people these days. So we figured we'd dive into generators a little bit and sort of talk about them. So there's portable, there's the built-in standby ones, on-demand automatic. They're lovely. Today we're going to talk more about the simple portable ones on wheels with extension cords, that kind of thing. You can get them at most hardware stores. I imagine they're probably sold out anywhere you need them these days. I imagine you're probably moving a lot of them around also, Brad. So one of the first things to talk about is, sorry, go ahead, Brad.
There was a home hardware in Ottawa on Bank Street. They closed the Friday before the storm at 4, knowing the storm was coming. They opened Saturday for 3 hours, sold 28 generators, and closed the store. That's all they were open for. That's all they sold. The store itself opened on Monday morning with no power. I was booked to go in and pick up loads for them to deliver. They had no power, no phones to even call my company to say cancel the order. The store is so new, it did not have its emergency backup generator installed yet. The guys were coming from Southern Ontario somewhere under contract from Home Hardware Canada to come and put it in. It just so happened Monday they were supposed to be there to put it in. We had the storm on Friday.
The worst part about that when you go into like Home Depot in the heat of the moment there and you buy a generator like that, not all generators come with enough oil to run it and everything else. So a lot of these people will grab the generator, go home, think they're good. They'll crack it open. They're like, please add 500 milliliters of 10W30 oil. I got to go back to the store and it's closed. It's like, so like, yeah, there's obviously layers of preps when it comes to that stuff. It's like,
rule number 1, RTFI.
Or if they don't even read the directions and they just go ahead and start it and wonder why 15 minutes later it won't run.
That's
why
really
rule number 1 is read the instructions.
And that's the whole point. When you can get this stuff ahead of time, as opposed to rushing to the now closed store, you're in a better position, right, guys?
It's almost like a test your gear thing.
Yeah,
So what, we have to do that?
Yeah, turns out
we should get onto that. So when you're looking at generators, one of the biggest things is the wattage. Most circuits in your house, picture your standard 2 vertical slits, little face ground at the bottom, run at 15 amps. That's a typical circuit in your house. The circuit breaker, the fuse, is going to read 15 amps. If you've ever run your toaster and coffee maker on the same circuit and tripped the breaker, it's because you're drawing more than that 15 amps. The breaker did its job. Typical hairdryer is likely rated about 1500 watts. It'll run smoothly on a 15 amp circuit. Likewise, 15 old style incandescent 100 watt light bulbs will draw about that same amount of power, 1500 watts. So the wattage rating of the generator tells you how much power it can put out. A little generator the size of a toaster is not going to produce as much power as one towed behind a truck on its own built-in trailer. So
that's true. And I guess if people need a quick calculation on how to figure out how much power outage or how much power usage each item has, they don't always show how many watts it draws. In which case you use what they call Ohm's law. Might be elementary for a lot of guys, but again, volts times amps equals watts. So it will give you usually 2 of the 3 items on the back of the appliance, and you can usually figure out how many watts you need from there. So just something else. And just quick mention there, you mentioned the old incandescent light bulbs, which are pretty much getting phased out. The reason we always talk about the LEDs is because the draw of the amperage and the wattage is so much lower that you can run a heck of a lot more lights on a given size generator than the old incandescents. So it actually makes a little more sense to have LEDs in the house already in place. This is my 2 cents on that.
Absolutely. I mean, running one old incandescent, you could probably run 12 or 14 LEDs for the exact same expenditure.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Well, even
If not
changing out
more.
remember that stand-up work light? I think I mentioned a couple episodes ago. There, it was 1,000 watts of draw for the 2 work lights. I took it down to 28 watts with 2 LED replacement bulbs. So it was like, it got just as much brightness out of it. So that was pretty good.
That's awesome that you can replace the halogen bulbs with LED. That's a nice move instead of having to buy a whole new lamp. So to figure out how much power you're going to need is kind of our first step. Keeping 1 bar fridge and a cell phone charged is going to take a whole lot less power than 2 fridges, a deep freeze, a microwave, 2 more deep freezes, a well pump, 2 sump pumps. So we'll use that Ohm's law and try and add up all the wattages of everything you intend to run on your generator to get that ballpark number. Remember, you don't have to run everything at once. A deep freeze will keep cold for hours and hours. If it's nice and frozen, unopened, you can just unplug it, plug in the fridge, whatever, and they'll both be happy. Obviously, it's more work, but that's what we're doing.
And most size of your generators, I mean, unless you've got a very small, like a 1,000 watt or something, you'll be able to run your fridge and freezer. As long as they're not like 40-year-old things that take 1,000 watts just to start up. And you'll get into the, the starting watts versus running watts thing. But I mean, you don't need a humongous sized generator. You just need something that's going to do its job and you're not going to overtax it.
Yep. So most of the portable retail generators are in the 1,500 watt, 10,000 watt range. So 1,500 watt, think of it as a single circuit. So that should be fine to run your fridge, that kind of thing. But if you're trying to run more things with that little generator, you're going to have a lot of problems. Some of the home standby units tend to have higher wattages, but we're not really going to talk about them because they're kind of the core built-in gas line. Love that. Not really what we're covering. Voltage is also a concern. Some of the smaller units typically do the 110 volt that your house runs on, but certain appliances may require 220 volts. My well pump needs 220 volts, so a small generator wouldn't be able to run my well, which is something that's important. So have to bear that in mind for your choice of generator. Jeff, you've alluded to starting watts versus running watts. Certain appliances, typically anything with an electric motor, needs that higher wattage to start the motor. If you've ever been in a house with like an old bed that has a big draw, and when you hear it kicking on, the lights dim for a sec, that's that extra draw to the. Most generators are made to handle a little bit extra. So those two numbers, they'll do the starting watts because it's the bigger number and it sounds more impressive, and then the running watts that it can keep going for that continuous service while it's up and running.
Yeah, I guess the other thing to keep in mind too is that nobody says you have to run your generator constantly. You can always run the generator for a few hours, get your freezer refrozen, and your phone's charged or whatever else you need to do, and then shut it off, and then wait a few hours, then start it back up again. Because of course, if you run the generator constantly, you're going to be running through your gas supplies a lot faster too.
That's exactly what I did last weekend.
Thanks for stealing my thunder there, Ian. I had that for you.
Oh no, sorry, man.
Oh no. Yeah, so I'll just touch on that now. It's exactly what Ian said. A lot of your smaller generators are not designed to run 24/7. They basically have the same motor as your lawnmower, your snowblower, your rototiller, stuff like that, and they're just not built robust enough to run 24/7. I do exactly what Ian said. I run on a 5-to-1 principle. When my power's out, I'll run for an hour. I'll run my generator for an hour. My fridge is plugged in. My freezer's plugged in. If I want to see what's going on in the world, I'll turn my TV on with my cable box, or I'll plug my my internet router in. I'll do that while the generator's running. I do that for an hour, shut it off for 5 hours, and then go back, run it for an hour. As Ian said, you're going to run through all of your fuel, and then what? And they're not designed to run 24/7 like that, and you'll just end up having more problems down the road.
Well, and alluding to that, when you read the manual for a lot of small engines, generators, your snowblower, that kind of thing, it talks about doing an oil change every 100 running hours. Compare that to your car where it's 8,000 kilometers and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours.
Well, especially they don't even have oil filters, right? They don't have any means to keep things on the clean side, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And again, you're right. There's no filter there, and there's no. All of them are air cooled. There's no water cooled. You get into the bigger, like the home standby generators, which we're not talking about, but they're all, or at least for the most part, are water cooled. So that heat's going to build up, and what happens when that heat builds up? Your oil breaks down a lot faster.
Yeah. So,
can we jump into this question from the YouTube chat from Wellesby? Because
I'm assuming it's that one.
That's the one. Good Lord, please don't do this. So here's why. When you run a double-ended male core extension cord off the generator into an outlet, it does energize everything in that circuit, and it's just that circuit. So it wouldn't even be your whole house, but it's just that circuit. The challenge with that is you also run power back into the grid from that. And that means that the people that are working on your power lines to restore power are now put at risk. And if you don't like how long it's taking to get your power back, wait till one of them goes to the hospital and then see how quickly they work.
Or how quickly you have the police come to your door.
Well, you'll have a visitor anyway.
Yeah, it's also incredibly illegal, exceptionally dangerous. That's second only to actually running your generator indoors.
Okay, I'm actually just going to play devil's advocate just for 1 second. I'm just going to ask a question only because I don't know. You take your home main circuit, right, your 100 amp circuit breaker, and flip it off, and then do your double-ended thing, assuming that that's what he's talking about. That should still isolate it from the grid, would it not?
No, because the neutral will still run back.
Oh, well, there you go. So I did not know.
Learn something new every day. I have heard of that situation. Somebody made a double-ended male cord. When they wired up the outlet on the wall outside, it went to another one on the inside that was an outlet as well. It was specifically designed just to be that. It did not have any other wires running to the panel. So you could plug the generator outside and plug something on the inside and have power inside instead of getting one of those, like I have that Reliance through the wall thing or the whole home hookup, whatnot. That's the only time I've ever heard of it. And an electrical inspector even said, that makes sense to me.
It does make sense. There's actually, Jeff actually put it up, I don't know, a while back after I think back last year when we had another power outage and I ran my generator. And there is a pre-made, inspected, approved, and insurance friendly, probably keyword there, insurance friendly solution for that. And I think Jeff said you can get it at Home Depot, and it's got the 30 amp connection on the outside and an octopus plug on the inside. So
I have one of those. It's from a company called Reliance. I bought mine from Canadian Tire. It's about $120. It's a 30 amp on the outside. This one, though, was just a regular 110 on the outside of the house and a 110 on the inside of the house.
I'm glad the electrical inspector thinks that's okay. I would love to know what his insurance company had to say about it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be going down that road, but hey.
Yeah.
So Melissa asked too, the Generacs, are they water cooled? Is that what you guys were getting at?
Depends on the size. The larger standard home generators will be water cooled. Obviously anything portable, even the smaller maybe 6-7 kilowatt home standby ones will be air cooled, but anything above that, the engine's going to be big enough that you're going to have to be it's going to have to be water cooled. And the other thing that I forgot to mention, which I think is a very important thing when we're talking about generators, especially the portable generators we're talking about, Yes, you can get them in different sizes, but clearly understand the bigger the size, the heavier it is. And if you have a requirement to get it in and out of a vehicle or to be able to move it, and you need to do that by yourself, don't get a 10,000 watt generator because you're going to be in the hospital with a hernia.
Or you have to put it on an ATV trailer.
Or put it on the ATV trailer, yes. So be cognizant of that if you need to be able to move it and you need to be able to move it yourself, you've got to buy one that you can move. Obviously, that makes sense.
And the higher the fuel burn too, right? So if you overkill in the generator, and overkill is the best kill, don't get me wrong, but there's no sense if you only have like a 2,000 watt requirement and you get a 20,000 watt generator and you burn through your gas 10 times as fast. There's not much point, right? It's just silly at that point.
Yeah, and we'll get into that a little bit when Scott talks about or when we talk about the different types of generators and how one's much more efficient for that than the other.
Cool.
A 10,000 watt generator on wheels is probably 200 or 250 pounds. A 3,000 to 4,000 watt is probably closer to 100 pounds. And when you get down to like the little suitcase ones, I mean, they're obviously much more manageable, but they're sort of that 1,500 watt range typically.
Yeah, my 3,000 Champion is 85 pounds.
Nice.
Yep,
Nice.
I was going to say my 3,500 is about that too. Yeah, and that's me makes a really good point that they're louder too. Like the bigger the generator, the louder they are, which is absolutely accurate. And even if you're not taking super nerdy things like operational security into consideration, it's annoying. We had probably 40 generators running in our little town, like our neighborhood. Most of them were running all day and all night, and it was loud enough, even though there was no traffic. It was enough that you noticed it. So,
As
much as you need is good. More than you need is probably not good, with the exception of those little like Honda inverter types, because those run really, really quietly.
Well, they also run down when your draw goes down. So, like with the Honda EI series, if you're not using power, it automatically just cycles down, which is great, and super quiet.
Well, nice. we were going to discuss that further down, but we've jumped into that, which is the inverter versus a regular generator. So my 3,000 watt is an inverter, as Ian says. It throttles itself up and down depending on the load you put on it. So A, you're saving fuel. B, you can stand around it and carry on a conversation at full speed. Most of the normal conventional generators run at 3,600 RPM, and they run a standard 3,600 RPM, and they put out whatever their maximum allotment is. So if you've got an 8,000 watt generator, it's putting out 8,000 watts. Whether you've got 100 watts plugged into it or 7,000, it's still putting out the same amount. So if you're not going to use that much, you're just wasting fuel.
Yeah, I think the reason the champion types like the Screaming Demons there, they have to spin at 3,600 RPM in order to maintain the hertz, right? That's what they're trying to go for is by spinning the magnets around at a certain speed, they get a certain hertz frequency on the power settings. So
they need that's and you're right that gets them the 60 hertz cycle. That's another beauty of the inverter generators is the generator produces 12 volts, and then the inverter inverts it. Obviously, that's why it's called an inverter to 120. It is much more of a stable electricity. If you watch, they call them sine waves, pure sine wave, modified sine wave. Inverter generators are as close as you're going to get to a pure sine wave. They are much easier on the compressors and all that stuff in your fridges and your freezers. They're much easier on your sensitive electronics, your laptops, your TVs, that kind of stuff. The conventional generators have more of just a an up and down, an up sine wave straight across that drops down instead of doing a loop of a gentle up and a gentle down. So that hard hit to get it up there, and then the drop off is really hard on your equipment.
So you're saying the power is dirty?
Yeah.
It's dirty power.
Very, very dirty.
Dirty power. All right, carry on. I won't derail the conversation.
In terms of the fuel types for generators, we sort of alluded to it. Gasoline is your typical one. Propane probably a close second. There are generators that are dual or even tri-fuel, and with settings can run on different fuels. They'll have different wattage ratings for the different fuels. A diesel VW Golf with a similar gas tank to the gasoline version is going to drive a lot farther because diesel has more energy density. Please don't put diesel into your gasoline engine or vice versa. They're different equipment. So diesel has more energy density than gasoline, that has more than propane, has more than natural gas, that has more than wood gas. So generator on different fuels will produce more power depending on how much density you're feeding to it. So if we're talking about a typical generator running on gasoline that we're going to fill from a jerry can, right? We want the generator off, we want it cool. It is more problematic, gasoline storing propane. We talk about fuel rotation in here a lot. Alan did a explanation of that last week and what we did for preps. So in terms of fuel rotation, we want to use that old gas first. So pour that into our vehicles and then refill the can with fresh gasoline, and then release stabilizer. So that's one of the chemicals that helps absorb water and sort of keeps the gasoline from separating to different elements, because it's not one pure homogeneous liquid. There's actually a component in there. We don't want it to separate. So it's kind of a pain in the butt to gas or work, use those jerry cans and them into your car or your TV or whatever, and then take them to the gas to refill versus just driving up, filling your vehicle and driving off. But because gas is perishable, that's why we need to rotate it. A 2-year-old can in your shed is probably going to be really hard on your generator's engine. That'd be extra bad if you're very dependent on that generator right now. So that's the thing that we keep in mind, and it just kind of becomes a habit, really. Is that a fair description?
Yeah, and on top of that, something sometimes a lot of people forget is they'll maybe rotate their fuel, but they won't change or rotate the gas that's in the tank of the generator. It's only the gas that's in the tank of the generator is only going to last as long as the gas that's in your jerry can. So if you're not keeping a jerry can for more than 4 months, 5 months, you shouldn't leave the fuel in your generator for any longer than that. Either run it through, and you should be running it. I mean, like we say, always test your equipment. I start and run my generators every month. I'm sure pretty well everybody else here would do the same. But you also have to be cognizant that if that fuel's been sitting in your generator's tank for a long, long time and you haven't changed it out, chances are very good when you need it, it's not going to start.
Well, I think that's where a lot of people run into problems, right? They buy the generator, they get it set up, and they just walk away from it. And then when the time comes, they expect it to run as new, but it's not going to happen. But that's why for aftermarket stuff with the Honda, you can just pour it out, literally, because you can lift the generator up and just empty the gas out. But the Champion, when I ended up installing like an extra big fuel line, it's easy to remove, and then I basically just take it right off right before the carburetor, drain the whole tank out just to rotate the entire tank. And then also you don't want to leave gas in the carburetors for most of these things, because then those come up the carburetor too. So ideally you have a fuel shut off, you let the carburetor run dry and then drain the tank later.
Yeah. Unless you like, yep, that's me who says I have so many power outages, the gas in my generator stays fresh. Yeah,
still rotating gas. Yeah. Look at the bright side, you're rotating it. Yeah.
That would suck.
My first car was like that.
Your
it would burn so much oil.
It.
Never had to change it. I just had to keep adding it.
Yeah, that's fair. It's another way to do it, right?
Yeah.
Actually, before we get going again
Always
here,
have fresh oil.
Wellesby's asking Scott, he's mentioned you were talking about an old truck for gasification. Did you have any success with that?
Oh, I mean, I have to convince my boss a good idea.
The chief financial
first step.
officer.
The financial officer has to agree that, the 1960s or 70s carbureted pickup truck is a good investment for us. So we're not quite there yet. So we need to, well, a few more disasters and see if that'll convince said financial officer.
Keep pushing.
Just gotta wait for the flaming guitar times, and then you'll probably get an older vehicle. No problem then.
Weld on some spikes and stuff.
That's right. Get some leather on, Anyway.
So talking about shopping for generators, one of the things they advertise is the runtime. Typically, they'll describe it as how many hours the generator will run on a full tank running at 50% load. The car analogy being, if you're driving uphill, i.e. heavier load, you're going to burn more fuel. If you're driving downhill, you're burning less. Consider 50% an equal component of those two different cars driving on flat ground, i.e. you can sort of make a comparison between the generators for, if that 20-liter tank buys you 8 hours, great. If your needs, the generator with the tank will run 8 hours, then all of a sudden your fuel is going to last twice as long, right? So that's what that means. We've started talking about getting power into your house. Alan, why can't we just run the generator in the house?
Carbon monoxide bad.
5138.
And that's going to be
CO very bad.
That's going to be the shortest description ever.
Mm-hmm.
I was totally expecting a giant rant, but yeah, I guess that's an explanation.
Listen, if you are brand new to the Canadian Prepper podcast and you've never heard of me talk about carbon monoxide before, go back to any of the last 118 episodes in which I discuss carbon monoxide at length. This show's running long. We're going to leave it there.
Fair.
That's fair. We've already talked about not putting power back into the grid. That double-ended male cord will kill people. Extension cords are designed in ways so that the power is protected and the exposed metal is the part that receives the power. It's done that way intentionally. If you're running a system where you have your nice generator outdoors and you're running extension cords in your house, bear in mind you're going to need some heavier gauge cords if you're having heavier load. If you have one cord coming in that's running 8 different appliances, there's a lot more amperage running through that. So picture one of those heavy-duty 12-gauge cords that can handle 20 amps versus that light-duty 16-gauge lamp cord that, it just is an extension to charge your phone with. That power demand is really important. I did into one of the previous houses, and the owners had some lovely incandescent Christmas lights up, all in series. There were probably 5 or 6 chains. Probably well more than the manufacturer's recommendation, and the single extension cord that was feeding get too hot at the touch. There was so much amperage running through that one duty cord that it was very problematic.
You will notice those cords are being overheated. The conductors inside them will actually start to twist. So when you start seeing kind of waves in your extension cord, it generally means that you have overpowered that cord. You've overheated it. You've likely done some damage to that cord inside. It's time to throw it out and get yourself a heavier one.
The heavy-duty 12-gauge cords go on sale. I checked on sale this particular week at Canadian Tire, but typically every other week I'd say they're on sale. So depending on the setup you're picturing, if you have 1 or 2 of those cords coming into the house from your generator, one going to the kitchen to feed your fridge, your deep freeze, another going down stairs to the basement, great. You just have several of those heavy cords rather than trying to run it all off one single light cord. During good times, it's a whole lot easier to have a if you want to just build a little piece that you can put in a sliding patio door or a sliding window that's easy to seal up, that the cord can pass through. Picture a piece of wood, stripping a little slot where you put the cord in, you close the window, the storm stays outside, power comes in, you're all set. It's a simple DIY way of doing it.
Fair.
Jeff, did you want to talk about
yeah,
circuits?
well, I mean, as Ian mentioned, there's that, and Brad mentioned the same thing. The Reliance, there's other companies that make it. Canadian Tire has it. Home Depot has it. I would imagine Lowe's, a lot of them have it. And it's basically what they call it's a through the wall kit. There's a box on the outside that you connect your generator to. Small tube with the wires goes through the wall. And on the inside, you have a 6-prong outlet connector that you can plug several items into. The only thing, and I don't know if anybody who set this up ran into that problem, but and I don't want to confuse anybody, and I want to be very clear. If you're unsure, talk to an electrician or somebody who is knowledgeable on electricity. You don't want to make a mistake with something like this. So the circuit, that control panel runs on a heavy cord with a 4-plug prong on it. And I know it's confusing. I don't know if you guys can see this. So that is the 3-prong connector that my generator works on, but it requires a 4-prong cord to plug into the Reliance box. I didn't realize that. I put the box in. I bought the 4-prong cord. I'm ready to go. First time power goes out, fire up the generator, go to plug it in, realize that my generator isn't big enough and it only has the 3-prong 110 connector. So I had to buy this adapter through Facebook Marketplace. Stupid part was it was a bit during COVID. I bought it from, I did not buy it through Facebook. And anyways, I can't remember who I bought it through, but they wouldn't allow me to come and pick it up. They had to ship it. I bought it from a place that was an 1.5-hour drive from me, and it took 8 days for Canada Post to deliver it. So go figure that. It's just basically a connector that allows you, like I say, to have the 3-prong into your generator to hook onto the 4-prong cord that goes into that box. If your generator already has the 4-prong plug, depending on the wattage of your generator, some of them have the 3. If they're smaller, some of them have the 4. Some of them, and this is where it can get confusing, and I say make sure you are right and you know what you're up to. A lot of the bigger generators that have the 4-prong are 120 or 110 and 220 or 240. You've got to make sure that your switch is on the 120 side, because you're only having the individual plugs on the inside. And if you try and run 220 through that, really bad things are going to happen. So if you're unsure, if I've confused you in any way, talk to an expert.
Fair enough. Maintenance items, I guess, in order to stockpile ahead of time as well. Somebody mentioned, I think, Jeff, did you make a list of this stuff here?
Sorry, what do you mean?
Oh, sorry, it's for maintenance items. You
jumped ahead a little there, Jeff, or Ian.
Okay, sorry, I thought you guys were all done there. Oh, carry on.
No, we got lots to talk about.
Okay, fair enough.
One of the other options is having an electrician wire in dedicated circuits. Tends to be fairly expensive. Another option is single circuit manual transfer switches. There's a link in there for the Easy Generator switch. Picture a 2-gang electrical box. So that's a square, maybe 4 inch by 4 inch. Half the front of it is a male plug, so you can plug your powered female end of the extension cord into it. The other part is a switch where you can choose between, i.e., utility, or generator power, or an off option. These are designed to be hardwired into dedicated circuits in your house. There's certain things that are by design made only hardwired. Your furnace is a perfect example. There is no plug to take out of the wall to stick into your generator extension cord. By adding a manual transfer switch, you choose where the power, that downstream appliance gets its power, either utility or from the mail plug, so you can't send it back upstream and add power to the system that way. Look around your house because, you can't unplug your furnace. So if you don't do something ahead of time, you're going to be knackered even if you have a lovely generator. Another option that I have is called the GenerLink. It cost me more than my generator did, but it's way cheaper than rewiring the whole house. It's installed by an electrician between the meter and the meter box. Has a plug in it that allows my generator to feed power into the main line of the house. Won't allow power back out to the grid, and it's a whole home surge protector. Does about 40 amps, so it can't do my entire house, but that's more than my generator can make, so that's just fine. I turn off the individual circuit that I don't need, and I can still run my fridges, my furnace, my well pump, my water heater, whatever I need. I went and labeled my circuit breaker with little green dots on the important circuits just to make it easier to flashlight. My stove turned on. The oven was way too much power, but as a safety thing, because the sparker comes in, it's kind of, I consider that an important safety feature.
Have you ever had to use it yet, Scott?
Yeah, no, I've used a couple of times. It works quite well. I like it. The new version that has a Bluetooth feature, I kind of wish I had that, because then it would tell your phone when the power's come back on. I have to go and sort of check the little lights on it to see if there's utility power or not.
I saw that Amazon. Sorry, go ahead, Ian.
Wellesby's asked if there's any books you'd recommend on the subject.
Which for generators, Wellesby, or for how to power into your house?
I think for generators and or interconnection.
I don't.
So far, it's been learning by doing.
I mean, I've got the, I guess if you want to call it the 1, 2, 3 basics of electricity, and it's a book. I bought it at Home Depot, and it more or less covers how to wire circuits and stuff like that. It's your basics. I mean, it's not by any means an advanced book, but for the most part, anything you need to do will get you what you need. So
troubleshoot a lot and give you basic circuitry.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got something like that. My dad has the old Reader's Digest, big, like rectangular book, hardcover, huge thing, weighs a ton. Loves that thing.
You should also be aware that, at least in Ontario, it's illegal to do any electrical work on property that you don't own unless you have a contractor's, like an electrical contractor license. So that would be another thing to consider.
Yeah,
everything's illegal in Ontario, though.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. All right, we'll go next.
So Wellesby also asks, is his main concern is his well pump. I will tell you what I did, whether it's legal or not. I'm pretty confident it is. Anyways, mine is a 120 or 110, just regular well pump, and it was plumbed into, obviously hardwired right into the electrical system. I obviously shut all the electrical off and switched it to a heavy duty plug. So it's a plug in. So it plugs into the same circuit. But when the power's out, I just simply unplug it from that, plug it into a properly sized and capable extension cord, and run that off my generator.
Yeah, so that would be a perfect example where doing a manual switch on that 110 circuit would mean you could plug in your 110 well pump from your generator just by plugging in a simple extension cord.
My well pump, my sump pumps, my furnace fan, and my hot water tank fan are all plug into the wall, so I can unplug everything, plug it into extension cord that runs over to that Reliance through the wall thing that plugs into my generator on the outside, and I am good to go.
Nice. So I'm going to touch on all the different plug types, and all of those Time Life, Home Depot 123 books are fantastic for this because they show you the little pictures. When you describe a plug, most of us picture two parallel lines, one's a little bit longer, a little frowning face under. That is your standard 15 amp plug, right? If you pull your stove out from the wall, hidden behind it, you're going to find a much bigger plug that does a whole lot more voltage and amperage. And it's completely different, so you can't accidentally plug your toaster into it. They're done that way by design, right? So the voltage and the amperages work that way. So if you're looking at your generator, a smaller one will have those standard wall plugs you're used to. When you get into the bigger ones, they start having the fancier ones, like with 4 prongs instead of 3. 3 typically means 110 volt. 4 typically means the 20. They can be higher amperage, like Jeff was showing with that twist, right? So that they have different features, right? Big heavy cord that's running from your generator back to your head to your RV. It's a heavier wire, heavier plug sense. Great to shop for those extension cords or adapters or RV dealers and the RV section in different hardware. So that's probably somewhere where hopefully you get it without having to wait 8 days in the mail, Jeff.
Be prepared to pay a little bit more in those RV stores, though.
Oh, absolutely.
I found that Amazon and Home Depot were cheaper than the RV dealerships in my area by a lot.
Yeah,
I did that. This plug adapter that I got, I couldn't even find it anywhere. I went to like 4 different RV places, Home Depot, all of those places. Nobody had it. The only place I could get it was online, and I luckily found this one place in Ontario that had it. Everywhere else, I was ordering from the States, and I knew I was waiting weeks.
Oof.
I can definitely understand that.
Noisy generators, it's a thing. I mean, you alluded to it, Alan, when the entire neighborhood is running on it. We did have a little discussion offline where people who were receiving noise complaints from neighbors during the power outages. Apparently, a lot of municipalities have specific exemptions for noise bylaws for generators running during power outages. So check your local area. The other option is if you offer to rescue your neighbor's deep freeze with your generator and an extra extension cord, they're going to be a whole lot less likely to complain about the noise from it. And yes, the Honda EI series are absolutely beautiful and so quiet. They're lovely, but yes, bloody expensive. $3,000 for the 3000 series.
Yeah, they're not cheap.
Oh yeah, they are not cheap.
I would love to have
so
one,
worth.
but I'm just not going to afford one at that price.
No,
And yeah, Hondas are nice, but you're also paying for the name.
Yeah.
well, and reliability too, and everything else. Like the, I guess now it's the 2200. It used to be the 2000, but it's 2200 now. You can link them in series as well, which is kind of nice. But that's the
a lot of the inverter ones, though, you can link in series. My Champion, you can link them in series.
Yeah, so they're pretty good.
Parallel.
Or sorry, parallel.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Parallel. So I was trying to say, thank you. Don't end up with the voltage. It's a handy little toys for sure.
One last thing to talk about generators, bonded versus footing neutral. Bonded, they're using the metal frame as part of the neutral circuits. Floating, it's just the wires. Typically, this won't have an impact on most homeowners. Sometimes it can cause tripping in GFIs. If you're getting down into the weeds that much, we're happy to help you out. But for the purpose of tonight, I wouldn't really worry about it. Typically standalone generators, it's not going to be an issue. we did get into some of the maintenance issues. So, Jeff, did you want to talk about some of the ideas for things to know how to do ahead of time?
Yeah. Ian mentioned it earlier. The obvious things. Know how to change your oil. It's not that difficult in those small engines, but know how to do it. Know where the filler plug is. Know that kind of stuff. Most of the those small engines don't have an oil filter to worry about changing. It's just simply drain out the old oil, put in the new oil. Spark plugs, always have spare spark plugs. Know how to change them. They're not difficult. You just need to have the spark plug wrench.
Spark plugs
Those
come
are-
in
those are
about
really the
1,000
two
different
main-
sizes.
Fuel filters, inline fuel filters.
Yeah, you can do that. They don't come with them normally, so you have to install them.
Yeah,
after
I was
the
just going to
fact.
say my generator does not have an inline filter. Some of them maybe do. Check your owner's manual and see what's there. I did mention it earlier. Again, fuel rotation. Make sure you're rotating the fuel that's in the tank as well as your external source of fuel.
And
I
depending
know.
on the climate too, air filters, because some people live in really dusty or dirty climates. Other people, they can get away with it a little longer, but at least know if it's a foam or a paper filter or whatever it is, and see if you have to carry spares or at least filter oil for the foam ones.
Absolutely. Yep.
Good. So I think that's been an excellent deep dive.
And the only other thing that you may want, I have it. Is spare pull cord. Spare pull cord, possibly a handle. It's not that uncommon if you've got to pull it that you're gonna eventually break a pull cord. So I've done it a couple times. It's not that hard to fix it. You just need to know.
That, and you can go and buy reels of it for pretty cheap. How many things that you have on your property? Your chainsaw, your weed eater, your lawnmower, your generator, your snowblower.
Yeah, everything.
All those things have pull cords on them. Save yourself a whole lot of headache. Go and buy a reel of starter cord and a good pair of scissors to cut it with. Keep them together. You never run out.
Yep.
True. Well, I guess time to move on to the podcast challenge.
Yep. I absolutely didn't lose my spot on the show notes.
No, that's awesome.
If you are new to prepping, reach out to us, join the Discord group, ask as many questions as you like. If prepping is already your thing, offer to help someone recently affected by this week's events.
Fair enough. We actually we did time out for the episode as far as we were ready to cover off pantry and cooking episodes or cooking topics for new preppers, but we'll probably carry on with maybe next episode or at least one down the line. We'll get back to that for new preppers. But yeah,
I think some back to basics episode kind of fun.
Yeah, for sure. Upcoming events, still Mapleseed events across Ontario as well. Not all sold out, surprisingly. There's a few available still. So if you want to improve your basic marksmanship with 22s, that's a great idea. Go to mapleseedrifleman.com/events.
And the annual preppers meet is in Desboro, Ontario. That's near Meaford, Owen Sound area. Anybody knows those towns, Western Ontario. If you're interested in going, they do have a website, www.annualpreppersmeet.com. It's got info on there. You can buy tickets. Tells you who the other vendors are that are there. I personally haven't been. Eric's been. I haven't. Whether I can make it this year or not is going to be up in the air. There's a conflict for me that same weekend, but I've heard nothing but decent things about it. There's a lot of good stuff there. So if you're interested, look it up.
Cool. Deal of the week. So a bit of a story. If you were listening to the other CPP, this was covered about a year and a half ago. Fireforce Ventures is still a store in Calgary. Unfortunately, they had a bit of a run-in with the law and some public complaints because they were selling camouflage from a certain now defunct South African country, and they were accused of being white supremacists, despite the fact the gentleman was from Asia. Anyway, long story short, he's had his fill of Canada. He's moving to Texas, and so now which is good for us short term. He's blowing out his entire store, 25% off if you use the discount code Dynamo at fireforceventures.com. And for example, right now they've got MREs on for about $10 a pop, which is a stellar deal, especially in this day and age, as well as a bunch of other backpacks, camo, everything else. Check them out. They're a solid store. And
Nice.
shout outs. Well, sorry, was that Scott?
No, I was going to say, go into the shout outs. I see you got some.
Yeah, so shout outs just to the Shearing crew for today. We had Jack, Russ, Amy, Isabel, and Mark all show up, give me a hand with the alpacas today. It's much appreciated. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll do a shout out to Kevin from our local prepper group who set up the meet and greet for us. I know he listens to the show, so thanks for setting that up, Kevin. It was a good time to be had.
Yeah, it's good. It's nice to find local guys for sure. All right, I guess I'll bring episode 163 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast to an end. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Please help us out and submit a review. It helps other people find us.
And we do record these shows live on Facebook and YouTube. If you want an early peek at the shows, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, Canadian Prepper Podcast, and click the notifications tab. That gives you an alert when we're going live. If you want to reach me directly, and I always love answering questions, you can call me, or you can't call me. You can email me at Alan, that's with one L, at prepperpodcast.ca.
He said he can call you. What do you want us to call you?
Anything but late for dinner.
Right.
If you want to reach me, you can just throw a generic email in at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca. And if Eric feels up to it, he'll send it over to me.
Well, I'll tell you too.
It goes
I've
by
already
courier
told you
pigeon.
everything I know, so prepperpodcast.ca works for me also.
I can be reached at batbradcpp@gmail.com if anybody wants to chat.
Awesome. You can reach Ian directly by emailing me at theislandretreat@gmail.com. You can also occasionally find me on Canadian Patriot Podcast on iTunes and YouTube. We record Monday evenings now at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. I'm also in the Discord chat for both CPPs, as most of the guys are here, I think. Email us if you want an invite. There's about 200 people on there now. You can find us discussing why government waste in society has me upping my generator card game. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, be prepared, stay safe.
And keep learning.